transcend MMA history today is going down with the news reported by Ariel Helwani that Ben Askren might be very close, if not almost pretty much a done deal, to get swapped for 11-time defending champion in the flyweight division of the UFC, Demetrious Johnson, in what would be an unheralded and unparalleled type of move between MMA organizations.
Yeah, unbelievable to think that this might be a direction that we're seeing the sport head into, such a monumental occurrence to go down today. There's a lot of questions still up in the air. How do you trade independent contractors? Some people are posting on Twitter some of Zuffa's contract language up for interpretation there. It's my understanding that it's more of a release the fighters out of their current contract situation with a handshake deal, being that each of those fighters subsequently signs with the other promotion, but a lot more details to come. What are your thoughts on this thing? Ben Askren to the UFC, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson to ONE FC. Initial thoughts, feedback. What do you got?
I think that it really goes to show how undervalued Demetrious Johnson was in the eyes of the upper executives of the UFC, and I think I think it's really sad. I don't believe per se that Demetrious Johnson was dealt, maybe the hand of fair play by the UFC that maybe he was rightfully owed. And I think that's kind of been apparent for a long time. Now, obviously, the arguments that could come back to that are his pay-per-view numbers and the total draw, effect that he would have had or whatever. We need to face the facts here, though. He defended his championship belt 11 times. And I think that goes above and should oversee just about any other kind of maybe narrative that you could patch next to it. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, agreed. Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, one of the best champions, regardless of weight class of all time. But I think his last payout was something like the 6th highest of all the UFC champions during the year 2018. So definitely not getting the respect he deserved from the UFC brass. You could point to the pay-per-view numbers, you could point to the results. Regardless, it's definitely clear that over in Asia, the lighter weight classes have a bigger draw. Names that come to mind with ONE FC, guys like Bibiano, Fernandez, and Martin Wynn. I mean, just you start to think about some big time matchups over there for Mighty Mouse where he may end up fighting. Ben Askren, though, a guy that's been considered one of the best fighters outside the UFC his entire career, will finally get an opportunity to test himself against the top promotion in the world. So dream matchups are coming in left and right on Twitter. Really excited to see where he ends up getting placed should this deal go through and should he sign with the UFC. But lots of different options both ways. Really good to see that we could have something new in the world of MMA coming here with these contract negotiation trades among promotions.
Right. And because MMA is an individual sport, and an individual sport, not to compare it or shed the light per se of it into as where boxing is concerned with so many different promoters. Tennis is all, if you're a professional tennis player, you're going to play at Wimbledon and the US Open every single year under the same governing body. If you are one of the best golfers in the world, you're going to play at the Masters and play in the US Open, probably play on the PGA Tour. In MMA, it's different because with these singular contracts that can be made for individual promotions, it doesn't really tailor a whole lot into the world of co-promotion and the creativity of making matchups. But now that there's this aspect of trading becoming possible, and Scott Coker seems like he might want to dabble in the fun a little bit too. I saw him tweet trades with the little thinking emoji and a light bulb. If we are crossing into a world where trades are about to become imminent in the world of MMA, I'm ready to grab a seat in the front row and pop popcorn for it.
100%. I thought it was big when the UFC had that negotiations with M1 Global earlier this year to release some of their fighters to fight on their Moscow card. Now starting to think of some of these ideas and possibilities the sport may be headed. Sign me up too.
Yeah, dude, totally. Could you let's play hypothetically here for a second. sticking in the welterweight division, if all the possible trades, I saw one earlier that was pretty interesting. People have been throwing out hypothetical trades. What do you think about Bellator and the UFC? Let me see if I can remember all of these guys. Somebody said, what would you think of the potential deal? Cyborg and Mighty Mouse to Bellator for Ilima McFarlane. I don't know if I can remember that. I think it was Ilima McFarlane, Douglas Lima, and a couple others. I think maybe Vadim Nemkov and somebody else. I can't really get your full per se on it without remembering the exact details of it. But these are really interesting thoughts that we now are kind of carried to think about.
Yeah, and if you're going to trade Chris Cyborg to Bellator, you better be getting Aaron Pico or Dylan Dennis in return on that.
Pico was the other person. Pico was the other person.
Yeah. But seriously, the thought of the dream matchups that could be made, should this become more of an occurrence in the sport, absolutely changes the landscape of the entire sport. And we could be seeing the dream of having one champion from another champion actually squaring off, and really figuring out who the best pound for pound fighter is in the world.
I think that's the way to do it, man. And I applaud, MMA as a sport. Without really having anybody solely responsible for this narrative being a thing, and that particularly in the UFC and in a couple other promotions, respectively, in certain weight classes, really put the best up against the best. And you don't see that in boxing, where guys will defend their belt 4 or 5 times before they actually get tested. You don't see that in MMA. And now with this type of culturally transcending narrative that we could be crossing into, yeah, I agree. I'm all in on it, man. I'm all in on the created kind of aspect of the unknown.